All right, everybody, welcome back to UFTA LITE, the beginner's version of UFTA Premium and UFTA Intermediate. I'm your host, Darren Walters, and it's great to have you here. In this particular video, we're going to discuss the basic gameplay, the basic rules, basic setup. As far as components goes, you have 16 field tiles in case you have 4 growers. There's a maximum of 4 growers and a minimum of 2. Players and growers are synonymous. There's 72 crops in the draw bag, and there's a pair of dice. And that's all there is to it. Okay. So what are the rules? How does basic gameplay work? Gameplay consists of dice rolls, and players will roll the dice and perform actions on their turn. The basic farm actions are disking, seeding, cultivating, and harvesting your crops. And the goal of the game is to harvest more crops than your opponents. Okay. There's 2 types of actions on a grower's turn when they roll the dice. There's positive actions and there's negative actions. Positive actions are ones that advance your farm, which include the farm production of disking, seeding, cultivating, and harvesting. Negative actions are those which hamper or hinder the ability of your opponents to score or earn or harvest their crops. Okay? And so that involves removing crops from the fields, and it also involves reverting crops or fields to a previous less productive state. Okay? All right, so those are the basics. That's what happens on a grower's turn. When the turn is over, they pass a die to the left. Gameplay occurs over rounds going clockwise, and that's that. Okay, so when you roll the dice and you get results, those results are the amount of actions that you can take, both positive and negative, on your turn. Okay? However, the higher number that's rolled always has to be positive actions. Okay? It can never be negative. Whereas the lower number that's rolled is always negative actions. Okay? Now, how do you choose? Well, the grower has the discretion to choose which number. You don't get to choose both if the die rolls aren't identical. Okay? As long as they're 2 different numbers, you're going to make this choice. And you have to decide, do I want to do the positive actions with the higher dice roll, or do I want to do negative actions with the lower dice roll, the lower number? Okay, and so here's an example. I rolled a 5 and a 2. If I wanted to, I could advance my farm, so I'm going to choose the positive actions, die roll 5, the higher number, and I'm going to flip over my fields because I'm disking them. They begin as unharrowed field spaces, and when I disc them, they become harrowed and ready for planting. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to disc up 3 fields, and that uses up 3 of the 5 actions I have. Why do I have 5 actions? Because that's the number that was rolled on the dice. Okay, so there's 3 of them gone. The next action is going to be to plant. That's logically what follows. Disking, planting, cultivating, and harvesting are the consequential actions of eventually harvesting your crops. These other steps have to be done before a harvest can take place. Okay, so we're doing the next step, which is seeding. And we're going to plant the radishes. Now, notice that the crop has to be on the correct field, meaning if it's not listed on the field space, you can't plant it there. All right, so here I have radishes. I look for the field space that has radishes, and then I plant them on that space. That's the only way that works. If you draw a crop that doesn't match any of your harrowed field spaces, if it isn't listed in the field, then it means you can't plant, and then that means that the crop would go into the middle as a discard. Okay? Where it's going to remain for the rest of the game. Okay? Those can never be reactivated or reactioned into the game. Okay, so this was my fourth action. My fifth action would be to cultivate the radishes. And then if I had another action, I would try to harvest. When I get done harvesting on a farm, I take my crop and I put it next to the fields so that I can tell how many crops that I've harvested by game's end. So just keep them nearby on your farms. After a harvest, we need to remember that the field reverts back to an unharrowed state. So we flip the field back over, and that is not an action. That simply happens on the harvest phase of the game. You have to flip the field back over, and then you can start new actions if you have them. If there are no more actions to do on your turn, then you pass the dice to the next grower and they take their turn. Okay? Now, that's the most common way to have a turn in LITE. But there are times when you roll the same number on the dice. So let's say, for instance, I roll double fours. What do I do in that case? Well, what you've achieved when you have two dice that are identical is you've achieved a balance. Okay? And the wonderful thing about that is you can use both positive and negative actions on your turn. Because they're identical, you'll do the same number of actions, both positive and negative. So, for instance, it doesn't matter which you do first. In this case, I'm gonna use the 4 and do positive ones on my turn. I have 4 positive actions, so I'm going to choose to disc 2 fields. That took up 2 actions. Then I draw a crop from the draw bag. I plant it. That's the next action. And then I'm going to cultivate it, which ends my actions at 4. Okay, now I look at the other dice and I say, aha, I have 4 negative actions. So with the negative actions, I can actually do several things. If my opponents happen to have several crops planted in their fields at various states, like so, what I can do is I can use those 4 actions and I can pick and choose which grower is going to receive the negative actions. Now, you can spread it out among more than one opponent, or you could focus all of your energy on one opponent, or you could have even distribution. It's really up to you to figure out how best to utilize your negative actions on opponents. So in this case, I'm going to do the example of I'm reverting their radishes. Okay, they planted radishes, so I'm going to revert them. And the reason I'm doing that is only the uncultivated crops in the game can be removed from the game. If the crop is cultivated, that means it's closer to being harvested, and it means it's no longer a threat to be removed from the game. Okay? And so if I use my negative actions, I'm going to have to first revert these radishes back into the previous uncultivated state, and then I'm going to use another action to remove it from the game, and it goes in the middle of the game space. Okay? Alright, so that took care of 2 actions. A third action I could do, if you notice these other crops, if I wanted to attack them, they are cultivated. I'm sorry, they're uncultivated, which means I can go ahead and remove them from their fields. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to choose 2 different actions. I'm going to revert this grower's fields back into unharrowed field spaces. Because that forces them, of course, to use up more actions on their turn. Okay? Alright, so that takes care of game balance with the positive and negative actions. So another scenario that comes up are rare dice rolls. And the rare dice roll is die rolls 2. I mean, literally, It's one pip on each dice. All right, a pair of ones or two, or die roll 6, where you roll double sixes. Okay, those are rare rolls in the game, and as such, they give you the opportunity to use what's called a melee event. And in a melee event, what you can do is you can use all of the pips present on the dice as actions to not only remove crops of your opponents, but you can take them for your own and plant them on your farm. Now, doing so requires two actions, because first you have to go on the attack and you remove the crop, and then you plant the crop on your unharrowed field space, or the harrowed field space rather. So notice that there's conditions. Firstly, it assumes that other growers have crops that are available and ready for you to raid, and it also assumes that you have fields that are going to match the crop that they have. Now, when you go on the raid, the status of the crop remains the same. So it could be cultivated or uncultivated, and when you take it and place it on your field, it means it's going to retain the same status that it had on the owner's field. Okay? All right, so that takes care of that. Like I said, you don't have to choose all of the pips on the dice to be negative. You could, since it's another balance, it's a game balance scenario on top of the melee event, you can also use positive actions and choose those instead. Okay? Yeah. But what you can't do, you can't, if you roll a die roll 6, what you can't do is use all 12 pips of the dice to do positive actions. And the reason for that is because it's a melee event. And a melee automatically assumes interacting with other growers. Okay? So you can't, once again, let me be clear, you can't use all 12 pips on a double 6 roll, a balanced double 6 roll, to use only positive actions on your farm. Okay? Alright, so that takes care of that. The last scenario we want to go over is the gamble feature. And so the way to gamble is, if you don't like what you rolled, let's say I don't like a 4 and a 6, you can roll again. However, it's going to cost you one of your harvested crops. Alright, so once you've decided you don't like the dice roll that you've been given, you're going to take this crop and you're going to return it to the middle of the game space, and then you get to roll again. If the dice roll is still undesirable, you can keep gambling. You can keep doing this in perpetuity until you run out of crops to return to the middle of the game space. Okay? Then your turn is over and it automatically goes to the next grower. If you do like what you've rolled, then you still have to, the reason you have to pay in advance is so that things will stay clear. You have to make sure you give up your crop before making that next gamble roll. Okay? Alright, so that takes care of gambling. The final subject we want to talk about is ending the game. If it ends in a tie, there's a special scenario where all the crops are supposed to be returned to the bag, even the harvested crops on your farm. You want to return everything, like so. Shuffle the bag up, of course, and then each grower is going to pick one of their fields and turn it to the harrowed side at random. Well, okay, let's be thorough about this. What they do is that all the crops get turned over and shuffled up, so we don't know which field type is on which side. They need to shuffle their fields first. And then they pick and choose one field at random. And then they will draw randomly from the bag, and if the crop matches their field, then sudden death and they win the game. So the first grower, let's say they don't match, then they throw their crop away, and the second grower gets a chance to play, and they do the same thing. There's two scenarios that can happen. If the first grower is successful and they get to place their crop on the field, the second grower gets a chance to match that and grow their own. Okay, so if that happens and both growers match their fields, then they take their crops and they set them aside as if they're harvested, so we can keep track of who won what. If the next set of choices from the draw bag are positive, then you keep going. Okay, so if grower 1 on their next turn isn't successful, then you discard that crop. If the second grower is successful, then they win the game. Okay, because it'll be 2-1. And so you just keep going in this fashion until one grower wins. Okay. And I'll have rules for this written down in case there's any confusion. But that pretty much summarizes LITE. Like I said, it's something you can play quickly with your family and friends. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes. And if you're a busy working family, this is ideal for you, right? As far as the age range goes, I'm not sure what the lower limit should be. I haven't really tested this with children or anything like that, and so I'm thinking the age range is pretty low, maybe 6 years old, 6 to 8. And so, yeah, if you want to play with quality time with friends and family, this is the way to go. All right, so that's going to do it for me and LITE. Until next time, everybody, keep on playing UFTA. Until I see you then. Adios.